Well, hello, good morning, and welcome to our Money Smart session on, insurance for small business. We're going to be taking a little time out
So
this
we ready?
training to talk to you about, the important steps toward building a business and how insurance can play a key role in that. So, again, looking forward to it, and thank you for joining or thank you for watching. I personally, my name is Quincy Branch. I will be your facilitator for today. And so this particular um, topic, if you will, a workshop is sort of really near and dear to my heart because I am an independent insurance agent. I've been in the insurance business now for about 23 years, all on the independent agency side. So I've worked with individuals, small businesses, large businesses on placing their benefits, placing their commercial coverage. So I truly am again, passionate about small business owners and entrepreneurs understanding and knowing and valuing, why insurance is more than just a line item required expense, but how it truly can be an asset to help you run your business, but also stay in business when those tragic life things happen. So, our agenda today, like I said before, again, we're going to go through some things and just highlight and talk about, some really important key factors all centered around insurance in your small business. I just want to say a disclaimer: all these things are guidelines. All these things that we're going to talk to you about, and present to you are things to get you to, maybe have further discussions with your team, your risk management team, or your agent, or whatever the case may be. Um, Life changes, laws change, things change. So we know the minute we print something that it may be outdated. So just keep that in mind to say that none of this is exact law in a sense. A couple of ground rules, like I said, again, we're going to go through the slides. You may or may not have the printed material in front of you. If you would like any additional information afterwards, we can definitely get that to you and go from there. So with that being the case, I do know we have our moderators from the Urban Chamber, and thank you guys so much for facilitating the call. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, if you're live on this session, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can type it in the chat, whatever is more convenient for you. But I just want to make sure that if you do have something from a discussion standpoint, you definitely want to make sure we get your questions answered because the more interactive that we make this for those that are on the session live, obviously the more value that we can bring. I'm a firm believer that real life experiences and situations give people a lot more realistic viewpoint of what things are going on. So we can definitely do that. All right. So at this point, and maybe Charles, our facilitator, you can just let me know, sir. Do we have are there any live participants on our session today that maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business? All right. No brave souls as of yet. So all right. Well, we'll see how that goes, and maybe you'll feel a little braver a little bit later. All right.
Hi, Quincy, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hey, Quincy, this is Daphne Moore.
Oh,
I
hey.
am, hi, tell your wife I said hi.
Yes, I will.
And my business is more marketing agency, a social media content creating digital platform. And I am here to learn more about the insurance aspect of small business, just to make sure that we are in compliance at all time, and just to brush up on what I think I know. So I am excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ma'am. And again, congratulations to all your success. Um, I do know this is it's good. It's good to hear from you. So, anyone else on the call? All right, cool deal. All right. Well, again, so identifying and outlining, laying out some objectives. So after completing this particular workshop, my goal, our goal, is really to that you can be able to identify the types of insurance which are required, for your small business. And then secondly, we want to identify the types of insurance that maybe you should be considering, those things that maybe you didn't know that you possibly may need. And then just at a very holistic level, just explain why insurance is important for your small business. So, that are our objectives today. Hopefully we achieve those. And so again, we always like to start off and just simply ask the people in the room or just have a discussion around, what do you know or what do you want to learn? I think Daphne opened it up and said it very well, which is probably true for all of us. We we're great and we're experts in running our business. And what we don't know is sometimes is like say again, what we don't know and how our business and how insurance can maybe help protect us from any loss or potential damages that comes up as we operate our business. And I think Daphne said it best, well, we don't know what we don't know, right? And so just being able to have these kind of conversations to say, okay, hey, my business does this, what about this risk? Or my business does this, what about this exposure? These are some of the things that hopefully we're going to talk about and just expound upon in the coming slides in the next few minutes that we're going to talk. So and I do want to say I think we'll gauge it on time. I do have a slated for possibly putting in like a 10-minute break. So we'll see how we're doing on time and if we want to do that or not, or so we'll just gauge that as we go through the content. So first sort of slide and jumping right into it. You know, we want to talk about and cover, the 6 key areas really that are listed in this outline. So we talked about insurance for your business may require, other types to consider, reasons for insurance, location related considerations, selecting a policy or an agent or an agency or an agency, and then what to do after you buy that policy, right? So let's dive right into the first one. When we talk about insurance, your business may require. So, an insurance guide is often available through your state government's website. You should also contact your state, your county, or your city offices with any questions regarding specific obligations you may have when you purchase insurance. States may provide guidelines on insurance company programs requirements for small businesses, and typically small business is defined as those with 2 to 50 employees. I know that even now that threshold is being increased to maybe 2 to 99. So it just all depends on the entity itself. State guidelines may also describe requirements for small businesses itself, to provide employees with opportunities to participate in health insurance. For example, federal laws may reflect, or may be reflected in your state laws. But it really is, I do advise that, you review both your federal and state laws at that level. Or you may even want to contact a federal agency to just understand, hey, I'm starting this type of business. What is required by the state to make sure that if for nothing else, as a small business owner, you cover those things, right? So many states may require auto to be insured for liability at its minimum. In Nevada, we are one of those states that we do require you to have auto insurance, whether personally and or business wise. So again, you want to make sure that you understand what those limits are, what those requirements are, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But like most business owners, I'm pretty sure you're using that vehicle for personal and business use. So we want to make sure that you have coverage set aside and put in place for those type of things as well. Yeah, I think that is good on that one there. So when we talk about, and we look at, let's discuss some of the other insurance options to protect against your liability, right? To others for what, and when we say that, to protect others for what you or your employees did or didn't do, that caused harm or injury or loss to someone. So, business owners providing services should always consider having what is called professional liability insurance, also known as errors and omissions insurance. This type of liability coverage will generally protect your business if sued for malpractice, errors, negligence when providing services for your customers. Depending on your type of business or profession, you may be required by your state government to carry such a policy. The issuance of certain licenses, business certificates, and registration may require that you carry out work-specific insurance. So again, as I said earlier, check with your state and local governments for those requirements. Or, as I said again, if you're working with an insurance agent, that professional should be able to help you identify what coverages you may need. Um, so, as I mentioned earlier, check with your insurance agent to help decide if you should purchase a general liability policy to fully protect your business in the event of a claim. In addition, while your state may not make it mandatory to provide liability coverage for your directors or officers of a corporation, lawsuits could be filed in response to what a director or an officer of a company did or, again, didn't do. This protection can be obtained through your directors and officers policy. Your liability insurance needs change just as your business changes. So we always like to say again, don't just buy a policy and set it and forget it. Make sure you're reviewing that policy on some type of quarterly, semi-annual basis. Because again, the last thing, and I see it all the time in our profession, is that a business owner will be selling, widgets one day, and then they get an opportunity to sell something else, 2 months later, but your insurance policy covers you for what you said you were covering 2 months ago when you said, hey, I'm selling widgets. Now you're selling, widgets and something else, and maybe your policy doesn't cover you for selling that additional item. Maybe your policy doesn't cover you for the operations of that additional, line of business that you're doing. So you always want to make sure that your policy is lockstep and key with what you're doing, if that makes sense. And that sort of really dovetails us right into, our first discussion point, if you will. Insurance can be work specific due to licensing requirements, and you always want to be sure that, again, let me say again, I'm gonna keep saying this, check your federal, state, and local laws. So, for example, doctors definitely need malpractice insurance. Certified public accountants, you are giving advice to people on their financials. So liability for specific work that they conduct on behalf of others, and for those errors are crucial. Lawyers, again, malpractice insurance. You are giving professional advice. Construction companies, contractors liability insurance. So for if you do work on for someone, and then now someone comes back and says, okay, the work you performed wasn't up to par. Engineers, draftsmen, lenders and underwriters. I guess I'm listing some of these businesses to let you know that in any and every business that you're doing, whether you're selling a tangible product or whether you're giving advice or whether you're doing a professional service, you need some type of general liability insurance, because that is what's going to cover you in the event that that client and or that customer says that your product or your services were not up to par. So we're going to dive right in now and talk about something that is required by the state of Nevada if you're an employer and you have employees. So again, it's one thing to say, okay, yep, I'm a business owner. I open my business and I'm starting it from scratch, and I'm working hard in the business. I'm grinding it out, right? And then now the business is growing, and now I have to hire an employee. So the minute you hire that employee, you have to offer what is called workers' comp insurance. You know, workers' comp insurance is basically that, the unemployment insurance, depending on where your business is located, it give you disability insurance, but really nearly every state has a law regarding workers' comp insurance. This insurance protects employees against loss of income resulting from work-related illnesses or injuries. So again, I want to repeat that. Workers' comp insurance protects employees, not the employer, employees, against loss of income resulting from work-related illnesses or injuries. These insurance laws address amounts to be paid, rehabilitation, retraining beneficiaries, and even medical payout limits. Some states allow a business owner to purchase insurance through a commercial carrier. Obviously, you can do it direct, or you can do it through a state workers' comp insurance program if that's available. But again, this particular coverage, and we see it happen all the time, whether you're in professional services, whether you're in construction, or whatever the case may be, it's just a matter of time if and when that happens. And then now, with this whole COVID and remote working and hybrid models that we have, that's expanded even more now. Because now, okay, hey, whether you have an employee that's in Nevada or whether they're in California or whether they're working from home or working in the office, you have to make sure that your policy has provisions and is aware of where that employee is at. Because again, if that employee trips and falls at work or during work time, that is considered a workers' comp claim. And then now you have to make sure that your policy is covering that, to get that employee the medical attention that they so need and hopefully get them back to work as soon as they can. And so unemployment insurance. So unemployment insurance provides benefits to employees who become unemployed through no fault of their own. They must be willing and able to work, and they must be actively searching for employment. So all those things are listed and regulated by your federal laws and whatnot. But you know, employers usually remit tax payments to both federal and state funds. So you're doing this when you signed up for all of your state and local taxes. So all of your modified business tax, your state and local taxes, you're contributing to all of that via those avenues. So this is not quote unquote, in most cases, sometimes a insurance policy that you can buy, but in some cases, a business with employees are required to pay these unemployment insurance taxes, under certain conditions. So if your business is required to pay these taxes, you must register your business, with the state of Nevada. Obviously, you do all that good stuff, and then you pay those, whether it's through your payroll company that you have set up, or your accountant that sort of monitors those things for you. But that is typically how you take care of those. I do caution all my fellow business owners, do not take payment of this payroll tax lightly. um, some employers fail to pay the required taxes when cash flow is tight, and you fall into trouble. But then when you do that, penalties and interests sort of accumulate, and they can be high. And then you sort of get yourself in this downward spiral, if you will, right? And then and repeated failure to pay may result in a tax lien. In some states, continued non-payment may be considered a misdemeanor or a felony. So you definitely want to make sure that you stay on top of your tax filings, whether that's monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Um, and this is just me. I don't say this as gospel, as a law, but when it comes to taxes and all that good stuff, find you a good partner in that. So whether you're working with a payroll company, and there are several out there, or whether you're working with a good CPA firm or accountant or bookkeeper, find you a good person that will take care of those things. Because as I mentioned earlier, you're a business owner. Your job is to make sure that your business is running effectively, and whatever product or service that you're providing, you're doing that. It takes a team of people, not just your insurance agent, but it takes a financial person, it takes a marketing person, excuse me, and all those people should be working on your behalf to make sure that your business is covered on all sides. And then we talk about disability insurance just really briefly and quickly here. Because some states require employers to provide partial wage replacement insurance coverage for the eligible employees for non-work related sicknesses or injuries. So currently, if your employees are located in states like California, Hawaii, New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, Rhode Island, just to name a few, you are more likely to be required to purchase disability insurance on behalf of your employees. Right now, most employers offer disability, whether short-term or long-term, as sort of an extra benefit, a part of their health package, which again, we're going to talk about that as well. So other types of insurance to consider, property insurance for your business can replace or repair your building and or its contents, such as equipment or inventory, in the event of a fire, a storm, damage, or flood, or whatever the case may be. Um, the definition of property can be broad and even include business interruption. And so, someone asks, what's business interruption? Great question. So, when you have those sort of life things or business things or natural events happen that occur and then now your business can't operate, i.e. COVID. We saw that okay, COVID shut some businesses down completely. There is a coverage called business interruption coverage that in the event that an earthquake or something happens and you can't operate your business for whatever legal and justful reason, there's a policy that maybe can sort of help you recoup some of that lost revenue. So you definitely want to make sure you take a look at that and look into that. Even if you rent a space or lease a space, you may still obtain insurance on the contents of the building. So therefore, if you don't own your building, but you're leasing your building and, hey, I don't own the building, but I got my desk, I got my computer, I got my inventory, whatever the case may be in there. Inventory coverage is based upon the average inventory of the warehouse, on a monthly basis. Depending on the policy, this insurance covers goods owned and are in your possession on consignment or sold or not yet delivered. So you want to make sure you're looking at those type of coverages. Again, because I tell people all the time, in my business, in the insurance business, it's not a question of if something's going to happen. It's just a question of when it happens. And as a small business owner, you know, insurance, I know most times we look at it as that unnecessary evil, whereas, oh my God, I got to pay this coverage. And we look at it as a line item expense, right? But at the same time, insurance, if placed and put in place properly, is really there to cover you and make you whole if and when the event happens. So, for example, we talk about this property coverage and inventory coverage. God forbid you're leasing a place from somewhere and there's a fire two businesses down from you. But what if that triggers the fire alarm system in your warehouse and the sprinklers go off and it damages all the material that you have in your business? You need coverage for that, right? Because if you don't have coverage or if you don't have replacement for that, now you have to come out of pocket to do all that stuff. So again, things to consider that as we're running our business that maybe we don't think about on a day-to-day basis. So other types of insurance to consider. We talked about the property insurance policies. Can basically come in two forms. Your all risk policies, really covering your wide range of incidents and we call them perils. But anything that comes up, except for those noted in the policy, because policies do have exclusions, and that's a very good point I want to bring up. On this call is that understanding and knowing what your policy covers, and more importantly, knowing and understanding what your policy doesn't cover, is key. The last thing you want to do is go online and find a quote unquote cheap policy because you just needed coverage, and then you read the policy language and you realize that the policy doesn't cover your specific business operations. And I'm not saying it as a scare tactic. As a professional and as an insurance agent over the last 23 years, I promise you, I've seen this happen to people time and time again. That they get a policy and just because they needed one to do whatever, and you read the language and the policy literally excludes or doesn't cover what they're in business for. So really, you're paying for a policy just to have a policy because it's not going to cover you if and when something happens. So just keep that in mind. We talk about life, we talk about disability, and medical coverages. These are all things that, again, maybe not required per se, but all are good coverages to look at and to consider when and if those things do come up and do happen. So our discussion point number 2 that we want to just get into, it just simply says, review examples of required business insurance. So if your business is required to, by law, to carry any type of insurance, yes. So liability, the minute you get into business, the minute you go to lease a spot, the minute you go to buy a building, the minute you go to obtain a loan or whatever the case may be, they're always going to ask you, do you have general liability coverage? So that's going to be required. As I mentioned earlier, If you know, hire an employee, yep, you're going to need that workers' comp insurance. So, different things you just want to make sure that you're keeping aware of those coverages that I need versus those coverages that I may need in the foreseeable future. So again, I just mentioned that. So we talk about financing, and lenders are investor required insurance, right? So financing a business can create a risk for a lender or an investor. To protect that bank, certain insurance obligations may be and probably will be spelled out in your finance agreement. A loan may require providing the lender with proof of adequate insurance coverage on a building or the property necessary for continuing operations. The requirement may also include a provision for the interruption of business. We talked about that, business interruption insurance, by providing for funds during the time of reconstruction or repairs. A bank may also require that they be listed as a loss payee on the policy to protect the bank's interest in the event of a claim. And what that basically means is that you're going to make an endorsement to your policy to add the bank as what they would say is as an additional insured. So you're listed obviously as the business owner, but now the bank will be listed as well. So in the event something happens, that bank knows and has assurance that okay, the business is covered, and and their investment or their loan in your business is protected. Um, Many banks and government loan programs also require what is called a key man or key person insurance policy. This policy funds for businesses, business continuity when a person or that key person in the business that's vital to the continued operations dies or becomes ill or becomes disabled. You know, that policy may provide funds for a transition period in the event of death or illness, and or maybe that person goes off to active duty military. That key person, if they're not in the business, really disrupts how that business flows, right? So that policy is really going to cover and keep the business sustained while they either look for a replacement person or they make a transition to do something differently on how the business operates. Another option that the lender may take is to stipulate that the borrower purchase a standard life insurance policy, but they name the bank as a beneficiary. So these are all things that you have to consider. And like I said again, I don't like to talk and make it sound like doom and gloom, but I've seen it time and time again. You know, while you may not think these things happen every day, all day. And like I mentioned earlier, the right insurance coverage, the proper insurance placement is really just there to make sure that you and or the business, or in this case banks that have an interest in your business, are made whole in the event that happens. So we talked about key man insurance, or key person insurance. I want to make sure I say that correctly. So it just says, do you have a list of names, and something to think about as a business owner, right? So do you have a list of names who could run your business, or that you would trust if you were ill for an extended period of time? Tough question, huh? You know, can you list who would take over your business in the event of your death? Do you have a plan for your business in the event of your death? Is there a family member or a trustee named to liquidate your assets? You know, is your business set up to sort of have employee ownership? So would the employees sort of rally around if the business owner wasn't able to be in the business anymore? You know, would selling to the employee provide income to, a spouse not involved in the business? And that's a whole nother key thing to think about. A lot of times as business owners, we're grinding, but again, that spouse that's there, you know, if we're not there, they have a direct relationship and a direct dependency on if that business succeeds or it doesn't succeed, right? And then, we talked about earlier, do you have life insurance to really just cover all of the liabilities of the business? So those things that we don't think about, those things that we maybe say, okay, well, if I die, everything will be okay. Well, no, we've left debt behind. We've left inventory that needs to be paid for. We've left, different operations that need to be attended to in the event that we can't physically be in that business anymore. So one thing I want to make sure we talk about, because a lot of times if people are businesses in particular, if you're into construction, especially, or if you're going after RFPs or something like that, you may hear this as a business owner talking about bonds. So we're going to talk about surety bonds here for a second. And surety bonds is a form of guarantee for contract completion. So I'm gonna use some terminology and I'm gonna try to, simplify it if possible. So it says, if a business seeks a principal or a contractor to fulfill a contractor, but the business who is hiring the contractor wants to be assured that the project will be completed as required, to ensure the business a successful delivery of the contractor buys a surety bond. So the surety company becomes responsible for the contractor's obligations, really. So if the contractor defaults, the surety company can either find someone else to fulfill the contract or compensate the financial losses, of the business. So in other words, the surety assures a successful contract because it assumes all financial obligations if the contractor does not deliver. And I just want to make sure that's key. So a bond is really saying, okay, this insurance policy will pay if the person that promised that they would do a certain task doesn't do that task. So it's really the guarantee of, okay, if we don't get that done, we'll get the money per se from, that not being completed. And so like I mentioned earlier, a lot of times, bonds are really important in construction work, obviously. And a lot of times the companies that are requiring these contractors to work will require to see, what's your bonding capacity? You know, do you have certain bonds in place? So just keep that in mind if you're going after some larger, bigger type businesses. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be required to be either be bonded, and or show your bond capacity. All right. So reasons for insurance. As I mentioned earlier, we talked about it saying, okay, looking at it as more than just a line item expense, right? So insurance manages the impact of risk on life and business. Without insurance, we would be left to really bear the brunt of the cost of those things that come up. Like I mentioned earlier, life happens. So whether your cash deposits in the bank are protected by the FDIC insurance, or you're protecting real personal or business property from losses, insurance is designed and can replace or repair the damages. Bottom line, insurance is that precautionary measure that, as I mentioned earlier, diminishes or lowers the adverse effects of an event can have on you or your business or your family. Excuse me. And I really want to pause there for a second, because when we talk about that word family, and like most business owners, myself included, that's the things that we talk about that we really, we don't see firsthand, right? Is that if something happens to that business, we don't have the proper insurance coverages in place, one or two things are going to happen. Either we're going to go into our personal savings, or we're going to, beg, borrow, from family members and loved ones, or that business is going to go out of business. So whether you're a local, restaurant, cafe owner, whatever the case may be, and God forbid you have something where all, the refrigerator goes down and all your supplies go bad. Now I have no supplies. Oh my gosh, what happens? You need proper insurance coverage in place to say, okay, at least the insurance will take care of the financial responsibilities or cover some of that, so therefore you're not coming out of pocket for that stuff. You know, those things are all important when you're looking at, okay, the reasons why for insurance, right? So the loss of income insurance means that the difference between your success and failure in the event of an accidental injury or illness. This income assists in making payments during those difficult times, as I mentioned earlier. Purchasing required insurance and paying the premium will keep your business running. Failure to comply can have some serious repercussions that damage not only your business, but your reputation. And we all know, as a business owner, your reputation and your character is key. Disasters, system crashes, electronic, downtime, it will happen. Shielding your business from those effects With insurance, a plan. We talked about this in our last session. Risk management, having a business plan for continuity. Your reliable systems really provide for constructive steps to really managing, as I mentioned earlier, your assets and when those things happen. Something else that's key, and we talked about this also in our last session, um, cash flow returns. So cash flow returns to normal, in an expedited manner, and losses that could have closed the business doors are minimized. Business owners desire to have the best products, obviously, the best employees, the market reputation. However, faulty work, inadequate or hazardous products, damages, incidents, as I mentioned earlier, they do happen. Liability insurance minimizes the effects on the business, assist in the settlements, and allows the business to continue. Um, so we want to make sure you keep that in mind. Insurance is there to help you keep the business going. You know, and also your insurance and your benefits packages, which we haven't talked about that a lot, but we will coming up. Are really incentives to help you retain employees. And that's a big thing now. You have to make sure that we're keeping employees happy, and we have to understand that we have to delegate the work. So we need people to help the business grow. And employees may think twice about leaving your business for the competition if you have a highly desirable benefits package. And so make sure you keep those things in mind are really key.
Quincy, I have a question.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
When it comes to the bond, um, if a large company hires me and they go after a contract that requires bonds, am I covered under the company that hired me?
That is a great question. And typically that will be spelled out in whatever the RFP or whatever that contract states. But I would simply say this, Daphne, more times than not, if you don't get that, or if it's not spelled out specifically in on that contractor's bond or on that contractor's policy, then you're probably not.
Okay.
So you definitely want to make sure you either have your own coverage, or you make sure that same way that the bank would want to be named as a named insured on your policy if you get a loan. Same thing you want to do there. Hey, am I listed as a name insured on this particular policy, so we know for this particular contract I'm covered?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Great question. No, thank you. So location related considerations. And so a couple of options are available to home based business owners. And so again, we know we're dealing with this COVID situation right now. We know a lot of people are working remote or working virtually or have transitioned your businesses to your home. Not a bad thing. We understand that. But also, I see this happen all the time. Many homeowners policies allow add-on coverage, or they call them a rider, if you will, for your type of business, and will include liability protection from injury to a customer if they come to the house, or an employee if that employee is working out of your house as well. But I gotta caution you, a traditional homeowners policy or renter's policy, without that rider, will not cover your small business activity. So for example, if your home was to catch fire due to a short circuit, in your business equipment, your homeowner's insurance policy will probably not cover that damage. You know, so unless you had that small business coverage protection. So I just want to make sure that you're key on, you understand and you hear me clearly. If you move your business to your home, and like I say again, yep, something happens, you got inventory there, or your home computer and something malfunctions, and that sets off something to file a homeowner's claim. The minute that homeowner carrier insurance company finds out that you are operating a small business out of your home, that's going to create some serious problems for you getting that claim covered. So it's better to have that conversation early and often and upfront to say, okay, hey, I'm operating this business out of my home, blah blah blah, whatever the case may be, to find out you can add it to your homeowner's policy, or if you need to go get that separate policy to cover, those business operations. Um, so we talked about that. Let me see here. So retail. So retailer liability insurance is similar to insurance for a home-based business, but with higher degrees of coverage. So protection from theft of inventory, credit card theft, which we're seeing at a lot now. Cyber insurance, which we'll talk about later, is a crucial coverage for any and everybody that has a database. So, we're definitely going to talk about that. Um, Loss of receipts, coverage for a personal vehicle being used in connection with deliveries. Again, we talked about that. Separate locations could be placed under one policy because, again, if you're working in Vegas, but then you got another employee that's working in California, because it's a remote environment, you want to make sure that you're covering and that your insurance policy has all those locations covered. I'll use myself, for example, in our business. So our business is here based in Las Vegas, but we have remote workers that are based in Oklahoma currently, Louisiana, Washington, and we had to make sure that our workers' comp policy listed their home as a business location because that's where they were working out of. And again, it didn't add any additional premium to our policy, but we just, from a risk management standpoint, we had to make sure that those locations were covered because if something were to happen to them while they were working during work hours, even though they were at home, that's a workers' comp claim. And if we don't let our workers' comp carrier know that, okay, we have exposure in these different areas, that may be a problem. You know, So your commercial insurance, it sort of is a layer that builds on top of your retail insurance, and really it's a lot of the same coverages, and whatnot. So it's nothing really different there. But it's just, again, as you have that commercial building or those commercial needs, you just may need higher limits. So again, that commercial insurance is really just building off of that and just making sure you have all the right coverages and all the right limits, if you will. And then again, even if you're a vendor, you have a kiosk at a festival or a conference, or whatever the case may be, there are policies like event insurance. We do those things all the time in our agency. So someone asks you to DJ at an event for a school. Well, that school is probably going to ask you, do you have a policy for this one day event? you know, that's a simple event policy that you may want to take out if your current policy doesn't cover you to go out and have outside events. So, you can do things like that in the event that your business get called out to do a food festival or something, or whatever the case may be. You just want to make sure those type of things and those type of activities are truly covered. All right. So we talked a lot about, the basis of insurance. And again, I didn't go into too much detail on all those because, again, I'm an insurance geek. I could talk about those things all day, but, I would hate for you to take a 10-15 minute nap while I explain to you the intricacies of every specific insurance coverage. But we talk about now, selecting a policy. So this deciding to insure is part of managing your risk. And like I said before, risk management is very important. But if a policy does not make sense from the standpoint of premiums, which, the premium is what you pay for the insurance coverage, versus the possible loss, then maybe the insurance is not feasible. So you always want to make sure that you have your adequate coverage to sort of weigh against what your possible exposure is, right? On the other hand, the replacement costs or losses are significant and you cannot cover the cost of those losses in order to continue your business, then, as I mentioned earlier, it becomes a rational business decision to purchase insurance coverage. So outside of the things that are mandatory or required for you to operate your business, having those additional levels of coverage really depend upon, does the risk outweigh the premium? So factors that affect your premium are the amount of the deductibles. We talked about, deductibles are a part of your plan, and that just basically means that, hey, in the event of a claim, this is what you're going to pay out first before your plan pays out. Deductibles are on your personal auto, deductibles are on your commercial insurance, deductibles are on your health insurance. So, that is a very standard function in any insurance plan. Your coverage limits, and even in most cases now, your credit. Those things are all going to affect your premium. And then the fourth factor that I want to add to that is your operations. So people call us all the time and say, hey, I want to know how much my insurance will be for this. And I hate to say it, I have to tell them all the time, well, I have to really look at more than just what you say you do in your business. I have to look at some other factors because a lot of different factors weigh into, okay, what that premium is. And really your premium may be different than someone else's premium because you may be in the same industry, but you may be doing something a little bit different. You may have more volume, so you may need more coverage. So again, no one premium is created equally in a sense. So and then your policy, just as a note, should really allow for growth of your business. We're all in business to grow, right? We're all in business to make sure that we can get to that next level. So if you currently have one location but plan for another, your policy should allow for that expansion. If your policy is new or recently renewed and the changes are expected, discuss those changes with your agent. Don't, as I mentioned this earlier, don't just get a policy and review it once a year, because your business needs probably have changed drastically from month 1 to month 12. Certain policies may require time and cost to expand coverage. So you definitely want to make sure you're aware of that, and ask about the impacts of growth on your policy before you purchase. So as you're looking at certain things, just simply say, hey, what if I add another vehicle to my policy? What does that mean? Or what if I add another location? Okay, how does that affect the policy? These are all things that you should be thinking about and looking at when you're talking about looking at your basic insurance policies. So selecting a company or an agent, and I say again, this is sort of near and dear to my heart, so I understand this. Again, as a business owner, insurance is not what you're thinking about, right? Insurance is not your expertise. So really making your insurance or your risk management agent a part of that, I call it that team that helps you really run your business, is crucial. So insurance is protection, and you want to know that you're getting the best. So making sure that you partner with someone that, one, is knowledgeable, one that understands your business. And I say this comment not to be disparaging, but I say this to as a business owner. You know, yes, we can all go online and click and find a cheap policy and put a policy in place to cover what we think our business needs are. But if you're not meeting with someone, if you're not sitting down with someone, if that person is not understanding truly what your business does, that person is truly not understanding what your business doesn't do, um, to me, you're opening yourself up for greater exposure, right? So yeah, I tell people all the time, saving money today necessarily doesn't equate to saving money tomorrow, because a cheaper premium today versus a loss that is not covered, and now I'm coming out of pocket. Which one of those do I really want to cover, right? And as we mentioned earlier, if I'm in business to really cover myself and insurance is really protection, then I want to make sure I got the proper insurance in place. And I want to make sure I partner with the proper company and agent to make sure that I don't have to worry about this. My agent is the one that's sitting down with me and making sure that we're doing reviews. The company that I have my insurance policy with is a company that knows my industry, that understands, my business. And so the policy reflects what my business is doing. So those things really are key. And so just making sure you're taking some time out to do that, I think, as a business owner, and I may be a little biased again, being an insurance agent, but I think those things are really, truly important. All right. So we talk a little bit now. Okay, we've identified what current insurance coverage we need. We reached out to a certified professional that has said, okay, hey, we can get you quotes and we do whatever. You've gotten the policy. So now what do you do after that, right? So your insurance policy should be kept obviously in a safe place in today's environment where everything is electronic. More times than not, your insurance carrier is probably going to have some type of portal where you can always have access to your policies. But I also tell business owners, you make sure you have that stuff internally as well. We talked about this even in our last session about risk management. A copy of all your insurance policies should be somewhere that not only you as the business owner has, but if anybody needs to come in because you're not there, you have that policy somewhere. So whether that's an electronic file, whether that's a file cabinet that's in the business that somebody can go get to that, you should always have those things readily accessible. So the general liability policy, the workers' comp policy, the directors and officers policy, the cyber liability policy. You should have those things where, okay, we can find out what our limits are. And as someone mentioned earlier, like Steph mentioned earlier, so when you're going at these RFPs or whatever the case may be, now your team can access those things pretty quickly, because what we're finding now, those questions are asked in any RFP. Hey, what's your insurance coverage limits? You know, do you have this? Do you have that? Some RFPs require you to have certain limits that maybe you don't have today. So you want to make sure you have that on file, right? Um, you mentioned it, keeping phone numbers readily available. Those things, I think, again, those things are all just key to making sure that when and if life happens, and we say this all the time, you have those things available. And so all the bullet points here, we talked about them already, meeting with your agent from time to time, making sure that, and I'm a firm believer in this, that, you're meeting with your agent so therefore they can know, hey, if you've shifted business models or you've done something differently, we can make those changes to your policy on the fly and not do them, at one time. Whereas now you filed a claim and you realize, okay, man, I don't have coverage because the insurance policy didn't know that we needed to have this, or we didn't know that we need to speak about this. So, you always want to make sure that, if your finances are no longer, you don't have a loan anymore, make sure you update your policy to take that bank off the policy. Just little things like that. If you have life insurance, changing your beneficiaries, you know, and these are all things that typically when you get a policy, yeah, you set it and forget it, but you want to make sure that you update those things, because sometimes you may need a notarized signature on that stuff, and you could be waiting months to get that stuff done. So you just want to make sure that you take a look at that. Um, I mentioned earlier that your premiums could be affected by your credit. So, business owners, personally and professionally, you want to make sure that you're just handling your credit responsibly, because that does impact your premium. Um, and as I mentioned before, when you cancel a policy, don't forget about the amount that you'll be credited or refunded. You may be upgrading to a new policy with the same company, but making sure that, okay, hey, I canceled this policy, before the policy ended, there may be a credit or a refund due to that. So again, and having that good insurance person on your team will always make sure that you have that. And then finally, if you have a complaint, for example, if a claim was not paid, you may need to file with your state, the state insurance department, the DOI, whatever the case may be. So you do have resources in the event, as a business owner, that you feel that the insurance company didn't do something correctly on your behalf. Between your agent and or the division of insurance, you do have other advocates that can petition on your behalf. So assuming risk is a part of doing business, right? So the minute we say we want to be a business owner, there are a lot of different things that come along with that. And everything has risk involved with it, even staying inside with a blanket over your head. We risk not enjoying the snow, the sun, the rain, the sunshine, whatever the case may be. So when we prepare for weather with protective boots, and coats, the outdoors is enjoyable. For us that are in Vegas today, yeah, we're a little chilly, so we got to put on an extra sweater or a coat or whatever the case may be. Without these, the weather is all we focus on, and because we're cold, because the weather's hitting us. But again, when we have that proper protection, as insurance does, from the risks that hinder us, hinder the productivity, hinder the cash flow of the business, but when those risks are covered, owners, employees, we get a sense of, it's okay. We can go outside. I got the beanie, I got the scarf, I got the hat, I got the mittens, I got the gloves. So the outside is not going to affect me as much. And that's really, if you put insurance into just layman's terms, that's really what it's all about, right? You want to have insurance as a business owner to cover you in the event, if and when something happens. And so therefore, you're not coming out of pocket personally. The business doesn't have to shut down, and you can file the claim and you can get your funds and you can continue your business. Now, is there some disruption? Yes. But at the same time, I tell all of our clients, I'd much rather have disruption than to have a complete shutdown. And that's really what it's all about. So as I said before, business insurance eases the burden of risk, so owners can go out, and I had to say, and focus on your business because that's what you're in the business of doing. So some just key points to remember, and just sort of just to review and highlight and go through some things really quickly here. As I mentioned earlier, check with your federal, state, county, and local laws for insurance requirements. Um, Making sure that you pay any and all unemployment insurance and workers' comp premiums on time are key. Whatever licensing you may need for bonds or additional insurance, make sure you understand those things. Just knowing that lenders and investors will require some type of insurance protection if they get involved with your business. So, just being prepared for that is key. You know, Things we highlighted. Insurance minimizes the risk, the impact, on your ability to continue operations. I've preached this entire time that we've been talking so far. Impacts your continued financing, helps you retain your employees, provides protection for your liabilities. So just want to make sure you understand that your location, your facilities, your autos, the type of business really determines your insurance needs. So keeping all those things in mind as you make changes to your business. And then, like we talked about it, always evaluating your risk, always asking questions, compare your policies, talk to your agent, making sure that you're asking those engaging questions. Keep accurate records of all your claims. So whether the small ones that you maybe file or don't file, or the big ones, keeping an accurate record of, okay, this happened when is key. Risk management, business continuity planning. Keep your emergency contacts in accessible place, and then updating your beneficiaries, making sure you're obtaining the releases on any of your coverage. And as I said before, maintaining adequate coverage is important. So, we've sort of come to the conclusion of this thing, and really, it's really been a pleasure in speaking with you guys and sharing this information. Like I said again, I truly am an insurance geek. This is what I do every day, all day. So I love meeting with business owners and really, highlighting to them how the insurance products can really help them continue their business and cover them, and look at it not as a line item expense, but more as an asset. So my question here is for anyone that is live on the line, are there any questions, comments, or concerns that maybe you may have that I can shed a little bit more context or light on, or tell you point blank, yeah, I don't have that answer. So, are there any questions? Okay, awesome. Oh,
Question
sorry.
for me, just know that I'll be in contact with your office, but I don't have any questions.
No, and that's awesome. And like I said again, even if you don't have any, specific questions to coverage, I would just say this as a business owner, it's always good to say, okay, let me just sit down with someone, and explain what I got going on. Let us take just a free review of your policy. We've done that and we do that all the time. Hey, tell us about your business. Let us look at your policy, and we can tell you, very succinctly in a short amount of time. Yep, this is covered. Oh no, this is good. Great job. So, because like I said again, there's no benefit or there's no asset in you paying a premium that you're required to pay or that you have coverage if the coverage is not going to cover you in time of loss. And so, we don't get into business thinking about the end, right? We don't get into business thinking about what could go wrong or what could happen. But at the same time, those are things that we need to think about. Okay, if this happens, what do I need to do? If this happens, okay, what coverage do I have in place? And I'm tying this into the last session that we had about risk management because they all sort of go sort of hand in hand. That when you're working on your business and not in your business, these are the type of questions and opportunities that you sit down and you talk about. Okay, what happens if this employee leaves? What happens if I can't get my supplies from this manufacturer? What happens if the neighbor has a leak in their office, but that leak, spills over into my office? Those things happen. They're not just sitcom things that people YouTube and TikTok about. Those are real life things that occur. And so, as a business owner, we have the burden and the luxury of having to think about those things, all the time. So again, there are multiple resources. You know, I am not the only insurance agency in town here. Like I say again, there are a lot of highly qualified, insurance agents. You may already have one that you're partnering with, but again, sit down with them, talk to them, making sure that you have your proper coverages. Your local urban chamber of commerce has resources for you to have. Your local SBA office, you know, all have resources that can help us as business owners to ensure and make sure that you are, moving and operating in the right direction. And as I said in my last session, and I'll say it again today, it takes a village, right? You know, we have to make sure that we surround ourselves with people that have our best interests at heart and that really want to see our business succeed. And so then from that manner, not putting all the burden on one person, but you make sure that you have people around you, accounting, insurance, marketing, just overall business mentorship, whatever the case may be, to ensure that you are moving in the right direction. So again, it has been truly a pleasure to have you attend this session. I thank you all for taking some time out of your busy schedules to either be online or to review this at a later date. If you're watching this, and so like I say again, if any questions, comments, or concerns, I would definitely say reach out to all of us here at the chamber and or at the SBA or whatever the case may be, because no question is a dumb question, and I think if you have knowledge, then you put yourself in a position to do better and to operate your business better. And really that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So thank you all so much for attending. Appreciate it. Be safe and good luck out there.